Thank you to our sponsor, EJ Cards, a small but motivated company specializing in cards. EJ Cards believe passionately in great bargains and excellent service, which is why they commit themselves to give you the best of both. If you're looking for something new, you're in the right place. EJ Cards strive to be industrious and innovative, offering customers something they want, putting their desires at the top of the priority list. Find EJ Cards at www.ejcards.com.au or shop 394 to 398 Middleborough Road, Blackburn, Victoria, and also find them on Facebook. Thank you very much, EJ Cards, for sponsoring us.
Welcome everybody to episode 41 of the You Can't Comp This NBA Trading Card Podcast. We're your hosts, Russell Gibson and Adam Amy, joined today by Matthew Yuga. I believe this is your second appearance. First with me, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, last time you were sick, and we really didn't know how you were going to pull up from that. The way Russ described it to me, he was quite worried, and not really knowing too much about you. I was quite worried as well. He even gave a bit of a sign off at the end, just hoping that you were fine. And I was like, "Geez,
I did. I heard that in hospital. My partner refers to that period of my life as the time I tried to die. Lots of times in hospital. But apparently, I'm not very good at it, which is a positive for everybody.
It's a very good skill to have, yeah.
Absolutely. But no, we've finally met on screen here, which is good.
Yeah. So, all right, we're back for another chat. Russell, do you want to recap the last time you were here? Things have been progressing. We've had a few more shows.
I'm trying to think what we spoke about, Matt.
I think we gave a bit of a Houston preview. I guess my introduction to the hobby. And we kind of have like a bit of a mini playoff preview, I think. I think from what I remember, I think Milwaukee was still in the playoffs and I was on them, I think, to win. And I think we both were. And out of nowhere, Golden State won. So
putting my memory to shame, Matty.
I can say now that I called it with the Warriors.
Well
pre-finals. Anyway, I think a lot of people called it. Anyway.
So I suppose we could also recap too. Congratulations on your engagement. That's huge news.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good to get away and celebrate some life as well and enjoy out of Australia. But it was good to get away from the sports car hobby as well for a couple of weeks there. And it was massive.
I was going to say that it wasn't a sports card related proposal. I hope.
No, it wasn't. Unfortunately, probably needed some thought for that, but maybe the wedding has to have some sort of theme.
There'll be a live break at the reception.
Yeah. I have seen that on TikTok. Actually, I've seen a few people. I think the groom handed his bride like a pack of cards to open. I don't know if I can really go that far, but that was just something I saw a while back.
I hope it wasn't Hoopso opening. It has to be at least like Spectra. I think Spectra is like the bottom for a wedding.
Oh, yeah. You're already spending, that huge amount of money. Why not open National Treasures, just...
I'm like, if someone rocks up and goes, have a great wedding, and the wedding present is like a box of hoops and not National Treasures, you're just like, well, really, what's going on? Going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to have to be a prerequisite for gifts.
Yeah. So just a bit of an idea of what we're trying to do for this episode. We just want to do an episode about selling and things that go on in the background for sales. All right. So we reached out to you because we see you doing a lot of sales on Facebook. So we thought you would have some really good insight into, what's happening in the current time. But the other thing I want to talk to you about too is your PSA subs and some of the strategies that you take around that. And then also to get your insights over the changes that you've seen the last, say, 3 years. Because for me, I feel like the landscape has changed like almost up and down like a yo-yo, to be perfectly honest. So I've put a lot on you then. So why don't we just sort of start at the start? But tell us about selling cards. Where do you start when you go to approaching some sales?
Yeah, so obviously you've spotted the Facebook sales. I deal with a fair bit of sales, and I try to mix it up with eBay, Facebook. I think they've got their advantages, disadvantages.
Yeah.
eBay, of course, you can list them all up at one time, and they're going to be up pretty much until they sell, essentially. So obviously you've got the eBay fees, which are around 13%. You've got to deal with eBay returns and all that sort of stuff. But again, pros and cons, you have a wider market, massive audience, and you can get a nice amount of sales without putting as much effort by, it's already up there. You don't have to keep uploading it compared to Facebook, where you upload a card and who knows if it's going to sell and it's going to get pushed to the bottom of the news feed.
Yeah.
But with Facebook, at least you get, 100% of the sale price. Yeah, I think that they both have pros and cons. I think you do have to have a nice mixture between both, and other platforms as well. I think they all, provide a use, but I think, having a mixture of both is definitely what I would recommend.
You spoke about other platforms. So other than Facebook and eBay, what else do you think is viable?
In terms of selling, the main one I've kind of gone other than eBay, Facebook, would just be Instagram. I know people do the Instagram story sales. Again, you're limiting yourself to your followers, but again, you're getting the full sale price. So I do prefer those two. But I have spoken about this before, but I've done a few like consignment submissions as well. That's with DC Sports 87, and that's just basically through eBay. So using eBay as a platform, but using someone else, like a different service, to sell the cards. And again, they get the fee, but DC Sports have one of the biggest audiences out there. So
Yeah.
it does help with getting higher sales with your cards.
Do you pay a consignment fee and then the eBay fee, or do they take care of that and roll it into one?
They roll it into one, but it is larger than an eBay fee. I think it might be 16 to 17%. But again, if I'm sending cards to them, I'm being very picky with my cards. I'm sending cards that I feel like I'm happy with whatever price that I think it's going to go for, and it's not selling in Australia. So that's normally like NFL cards. I find obviously NFL cards, it's a smaller market here. You send it to DC Sports, and you've got the American market. So that's massive, and
Yeah.
it's way easier to get a sale over there, and it's by auction anyway. So
Yeah.
it's going to get a sale. It's just really what the price goes for.
So are they known to shill bid up their auctions, like say Probstein or something like this?
Well, I have noticed with DC Sports, because I do buy for them, that a lot of their auctions do go over comps, and you do have. I mean, you can easily look at shield. If it is being shilled. I haven't heard anything about DC Sports specifically shilling themselves.
Yeah.
I'd find more so if it was anyone shilling, it'd be the person like myself. I'm sending in my cards.
Yeah.
I wanted to go for a higher price, and I'm going to put in a bid of what I want it to go for, and then hopefully someone's going above that. So, that's probably the shilling I would expect, but not from DC Sports side, and I haven't heard that
wouldn't
yet.
be in house. I mean, there's too much of a risk there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's more like you have heard that stuff with Probstein, PWCC, and all that sort of stuff. But it's the risk with all auction houses. I feel like that, and consignment services, that there's going to be some level of shilling. It's just having that ability to weed it out and make sure that you can spot it. And just make sure you're not acting on that as well.
Yeah, for me, in an ideal world, I wouldn't buy from Probstein ever. That would be, if I could live in that place. But it just seems to me like they get a lot of really good cards, and they get a lot of big cards, and invariably they come up into my searches or into my feed when I'm on. So as much as I say I'll never buy from them again, or whatever it is, like it sort of gets to a point where they just have so much good stuff. And I mean, my strategy for that is I just sort of decide a price that I want to pay for the card, and I'll check out some comps, and I'll put in my final bid first, and then if I get it, I get it, and if I don't, well, then I just don't want to be part of that sort of negative. You don't want to
get
cycle.
suckered in.
Yeah, that's right. Or suck it in to that sort of stuff. So it's tricky though, isn't it, when it comes to the people who are shilling up bids?
Yeah, and I did my research before setting in my cards. I did hear a lot of bad experiences for people sending into Probstein in terms of like sending it in. They weren't even uploading it for 2 to 3 months. DC Sports were uploading within 2 to 3 days. So I have no complaints about DC Sports. I had a couple people not pay for their auctions, and they relisted within 10 days. I think it's their policy. So no, I really rate highly DC Sports.
Yeah, great. Okay, I think we should put this into the rundown for the show, because that's the type of stuff that I think is really handy for people. And I think that is a definite disadvantage of being in Australia when it comes to selling your cards. Just the market that we have is 10% of the US market, or maybe even less. Like it's just massive overseas. So yeah, that's
another little advantage, especially with the way our currency is going, is the US dollar is obviously doing quite well for them. So if you sell over there, it translates over here quite well. So That's like a little benefit as well to selling overseas at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice one.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, I suppose. So when you're selling, do you look at the potential market? Obviously, you've said NFL is it's better to sell overseas. What have you found with basketball though locally? Is the community here still fairly active, or is everybody trying to grab a deal and pay unders?
Yeah, I feel like here everyone's trying to get a deal, pay unders as well. But the cards I would more so send there have been ones that, again, I've had in my eBay store up for a while,
Yep.
and I just want to get a quick sale.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I had a Kevin Durant autograph that I was trying to sell for ages. Probably the best way to go about that, from what I see on Facebook groups, is just to razz it. But yeah, I just can't be bothered going through all the minis and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I was just like, I'm going to send it into DC Sports. Easy, just pack it in and they'll list it for me. So stuff like that is what I would be kind of picking out to sell.
Yep.
It hasn't just been NFL. It's been a nice little mixture for me, if anything.
Yeah.
Funny when you spoke about couldn't be bothered to do a Raz. So I've actually seen a few of the boys who are essentially consigning cards to be razzed by somebody else.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, like the thought of chasing up 100 payments of $5, that just like does my head in too. So it's not something that I'm particularly that interested. But like clearly, there's a huge market out for for razzes. Like they get snapped up and literally, I suppose the other thing too is if you're doing it every single day, you'll probably get quite good at it too, and
Yeah,
know
that's
the
true.
people you need to chase, and
Yep.
so I mean that's another option, isn't it, to reach out to these people who are doing like essentially they're consignment razzes, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's I guess we're in Australia, so everyone likes a good chook raffle. Win a free meat tray and maybe a basketball card. Why not? It's interesting the markets though. Like there's a lot of high end auctions in the States, and that's because it's such a bigger market. And here it's not as prevalent, I guess, would be the terminology.
Have you ever subbed or sold cards through PWCC?
No, I haven't. No.
Yep.
I did buy from their auctions the first 2-3 weeks it came out, and so many cards went under comps at the time, and I think that put me off selling there. But now they've added a buyer's premium, so I'm not too sure. I think I'm happy to stick to DC Sports just because I've dealt with them heaps, and they've always been quite good to me.
Yep. No, that's very, very fair, to be honest. All right. Anything else you want to chat about in this space, Ad?
Look, I suppose we can sort of move on. I wanted to talk about sort of you've had a big thing about grading recently, so I thought we'd talk about slabbed cards in particular, like graded cards versus raw cards. I know there's a lot of raw in the local markets, but as far as an investment, graded cards are where it's at. Would you agree, or is there money to be made in raw?
I think we just had a discussion about this before. Like, I feel like Panini's quality has just been a bit average with Prizm, especially. Like, I've been eyeing off my players and looking through newly listed auctions every day on eBay, and I feel like it's really hard at the moment. I feel, and of course, with grading, you get that authenticity that you know what the grade is. So, yeah, I feel like the money in terms of grading isn't as good as what it was.
Yep.
And I think people are being a little bit fearful of that, especially like myself. Like I'm getting PSA submissions back. And at the time when I sent them, PSA 9s would be break even, and I was fine with that. But now you're getting back submissions, and PSA 10s aren't even going to make you money. So I think people are being very picky. It's a skill that's being learnt as well, which is not a bad thing. People are learning, but yeah, I'm sure you guys would have experienced it as well with any submissions that you've sent. It's been a bit tough, and it's make you think twice about grading as well with the way the prices are going.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things we've discovered on the show when we're looking deeper into cards is basically we'll talk about a player and we'll look at what their PSA 10 is, and we're saying this is selling for 50, 60 US. And my first thought is, why would I send off a raw version in the hope that it comes back for a 10? If that's the price of a PSA 10, I'm snapping it up for that price. Is that a market thing, or do you think that's sort of PSA or the grading companies in general, that the price of grading is is getting to a point where there's less value in it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It can go both ways. I feel like PSA suspending their grading, people were like, "Oh, PSA suspending their grading is going to push the prices up of PSA slabs." I was someone that thought the opposite because you got to remember that there was still a massive backlog that's still going, and those cards are going to get pushed out. So once people get those cards back, they're going to sell them off, and it's just that cycle that just repeats. So, yeah, it's a bit of a hard one. It depends on the player as well, but I do feel like it's more the market. It's that almost like that PSA junk era sort of that period where people are getting a little bit sick of just all the PSA slabs. It's
what are we
it's
going to do with
definitely
all these
changed.
slabs?
This is going to be funny. It's going to be like the timeline of basketball cards goes. There was like we had the 80s where basketball cards exploded, then the 90s junk wax era, and then like all of a sudden the transition from your traditional cards to, I suppose, the Panini revolution, you call it, to, we'll call it the junk PSA era or the junk slab era.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
And
it's interesting.
yeah. Like some of the ones I get back, I look at them and I'm like, what was I even thinking? Like it's crazy. But at the time I was excited, and I've said this before. Like I am thankful to PSA for halting grading, because had they have stayed open, that was what was it, like 3 or 4 months that they were suspending. I would have sent, who knows, 300-400 cards that I would have easily lost money on. So I actually am grateful for PSA for closing. I know people were pissed off, but I was actually happy that they closed.
Yeah.
Looking back in hindsight.
So
it's Sorry, Russell. Yeah.
No. After you, Ed, go.
It's just very curious to me at the moment with like the market's changed. Like we people didn't like junk wax. People bought less cards, so Panini changed things, and we got less cards and more quality, I guess. Then they got different releases, and basketball cards evolved. What would you? There's still got to be value in slabbed in PSA graded cards. How do you identify value versus rubbish, I guess? And will there come a point where PSA 9s are actually not break even and actually profitable? Because I heard that and thought that makes no sense. You know how you hear something and you go, hang on, this is an almost perfect card, but you're only breaking even.
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of card as well. I think base, has obviously really gone down the drain. I think a couple of years ago, even Sports Card Investor would always go on the fact that the collector wants base, but I think people have just gotten over it. It's just there's just that much out there that we've just kind of gotten sick of base, and I feel like really to send in a card and get that PSA 9 grade and do well on it, you're almost looking at cards that are really short printed. That would be something I would target, and it's something that I have tried to adjust. Looking at my results from just before it got suspended. So yeah, that would be more my thinking of it.
Yeah, we've talked a couple of times on the show about alternatives to base, because as much as we'd love to be one of the proud owners of the 20-something thousand Zions and Luka base PSA 10s, like something that's numbered that actually has a limited run seems like the better choice. Population count seems to be a relevant factor.
Absolutely, yeah. The population count is definitely gotten into it massively, and even I feel like people were very early on in looking at Zion and Jar cards and even Lucas and saying, yeah, like this is base junk and all that sort of stuff. But it's gone back to 2012, and all those cards have even come down. It's really being hit everywhere. But that's probably where it should be. It probably should be at that price and not really any much lower, but just should be there. The way it's going.
Base being treated like base cards, effectively.
Yeah, exactly
That's not insulting to base cards. Like a Prizm base card is still obviously worth more than a 10 hoops base, but it's still a base card. Like even the short printed, like the different color schemes, the numbered cards specifically. That's where I guess in my view the quality would be, and I think Russell agrees as far as looking at in investment style cards. especially for a rookie, you want something numbered, something that does have a ceiling as far as its rarity.
This week's episode is brought to you by our very proud sponsor, Slabbed Cards, who specialize in card grading with PSA and SGC. Slabbed Cards are authorized PSA dealers, and card grading starts from $54.95 and includes full insurance, secure storage. Slabbed Cards have 2 tons of backgrade safes, 24-hour surveillance, and are located in a guarded, monitored building. All cards are scanned on arrival and are available to you for viewing at any time, and Slab Cards provide automatic progress notifications. Your submissions also come with complete tracking and notifications from start to finish. Slab Cards also offer specialized shipping services, domestic shipping service with up to $10,000 insurance per parcel, domestic secure hand-to-hand shipping service delivery within 24 hours of pickup, and international shipping with up to $150,000 of insurance per parcel. Contact Slab Cards for a quote at slabd.com.au. That's slabd.com.au. And also find them at 60 Weymount Street in Adelaide. Thanks very much for supporting us, Slab Cards. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think, Matt, you sort of touched on that a little bit already, didn't you? So, but it just seems like the population of these cards now is just like, it's literally just getting out of control, isn't it? I think that's probably the thing that's really going through my head with, where is all this headed, I suppose? And when does it stop? And maybe this is like part of the natural slowdown, like collectors are just getting a little bit more like, we're 1 or 2 years down the track on average, and all these people that sort of did come into the hobby, they are just that little bit more experienced. So maybe that's also part of it too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Possible an evolution in the hobby. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main thing actually I wanted to bring you on and ask you, Maddie, and this is a little bit of a leading question, so sort of just bear with me a little bit, but I just want to just hear your thoughts around this, is that what were your expectations, say, 3 years ago when you were subbing to PSA? And when I mean expectations, you don't need to give numbers, but like return on investment, say like a percentage or something like that. Or even just your feeling about it. Were you feeling really good about it? Were you feeling, this or that? And then maybe like fast forward 1 more year and then sort of tell me about your expectations and your feelings, and then tell me now about your current expectations and feelings about doing a PSA sub. Because I know for me, I just feel like it's been this sort of, massive sort of, yo-yo that's gone up and down. And I just really like, because just for the fact you have subbed so many cards, I'd really like to hear your sort of insights on that.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, I didn't really sub as frequent. I did sub a few cards, but again, it wasn't massive. So I don't really think I had too many thoughts about that. But definitely 2 years ago, just pre-COVID, mindset was way different. Obviously, I didn't send too many cards. I still remember the first one I sent into PSA was like a Luke. No, it wasn't Luca. It was a Jarmarant Prizm, and it was a Luca Prizm as well, Zion Prizm, and I think I did like a Shea Silver. But yeah, I remember just seeing if I had a PSA 9. I remember just like thinking in my head, with the way prices were going then, it was really just hoping that the PSA submission would come back in time, because I think even like an 8 or a 9 was enough to make money. Like that's just how the sports card market was going
Yeah.
at the time.
It was so hot, wasn't it?
It was super hot, and that's when it really started picking up. It was essentially, a rising tide lifts all boats. Really, you could have sent in any card to PSA at that time.
Yep.
Got it back, and you would have made money.
And we've made jokes about that too. Is like, how many Ty Jerome rookie base cards do you need? Like, who were these people that were sending them in? And but the funny thing is that people would sub them and they would sell them. Do you remember that stuff? Like, and so
it didn't matter what you subbed, you got you could just, a slabbed card was,
you're doubling your money, and so and
so you think about that. I would have got let's say March, April, May of 2020. I would start getting those cards back, December, January, February, around that period.
So it's at like a 6 or 7 month sub. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And you sell them off, making great profit. I remember that Luca Zion sort of sub. I think I bought the jar card for about $30, $30-$40 at the time. Raw, graded it for around $40, and I think I sold it it got a 10, so I sold that one for about 700. I remember when I sold it, I was like, geez, I reckon I'm selling it at a point where it's still going to go up. Like, I was still panicking. But I actually think that 700 point was around the high point. So it's funny when you look back at it and you think how your mind changes. But yeah, again, you get those cards back, you sell it, you're excited, you're like, wow, I've made over $1,000.
Yeah.
Let's send more cards in, and
Yeah.
then you basically look for the similar cards, and then you look for cards even more than, like, because you've obviously accumulated more cards in that period.
Yeah.
Then you start sending even more subs. So then you think, oh, if I sent in 4 or 5 cards and I made $1,500, I'm going to send in 40 cards. I'm going to make like 10 grand.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah. Do the
Yeah.
maths, right? It's yeah.
It's and that's how it was. That was my thinking then. I remember that, and getting my PSA submissions back now. I'm starting to get January, February from last year, and yeah, breaking even, barely getting over. It's funny, but it's a lesson learned, and I'm not too fussed about it. There's definitely worse stories out there. But it's very interesting. Like, even now, yeah, when I send my subs in, like, I have no real intention of thinking I'm going to make such a massive profit. I don't know. It doesn't. I feel like I'm a bit scarred. It's it's not how it was back then. Like, I was super excited to send in all cards, and now I'm just like being really antsy, looking at everything perfectly. I'm like, geez, have I missed something there? And I think you do need to do that, of course, but it definitely isn't exciting for me now. But that's also because of the price. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
No, you've answered. This is exactly what I wanted to hear from you, and I know I sort of led you into that, but at the same time, I was sort of hoping you would give an answer, somewhat similar to that, because that's probably my observation of, what's happening at the moment. And it seems also too, when people are selling PSA graded cards, the sales are really, really slow, where it used to be the complete opposite. As soon as you put the photo up, like, someone would be in there and, there'd be 2 or 3 people saying sold, Whereas,
Absolutely.
yeah, these days you can sort of see people, they put them up the next week and they drop their price, and then they put them up the next week and they drop their price again, and they're sort of still sitting there. So it's just a completely different, market, and
it's an interesting landscape. And I guess my follow-up question to that is, do you think it's a combination of the economy as it is at the moment? Obviously there are a lot of strains on a lot of people, like, globally, and I'm sure hobbies take quite a hit. Or do you think it's more of a market correction from, we'll call it the COVID crazy period, because it did, the market spiked, and I think we're at a point where the market is correcting. It's not bottoming out, but I feel like there's a correction that's happening. And as we've said, base cards are getting treated like base cards again. There was a period where they weren't. This seems to me like it could even be a combination of the two, but in the long run, there will be cards that like the whole grading a card and then flipping it will go back to, we'll call it normality, where good cards get graded, and then the cream sort of rises to the top.
Is that a question or a statement, Ad? What's going on?
Bit of both. Well, I'd like to see what everybody else thinks, because I think it's both, and I think, but I there are some things that I think it's the hobby, and there are some times that I think it's just the local economy.
It's absolutely a bit of both. We're not getting the government handouts anymore. People, I would just, I'm part of it. People will get the government handouts, and the first thing that they want to do is spend it. And you just hear it on, like, dumb things as well. So I think it's a little bit of both. Plus, I feel like people who have been in the sports card hobby now, they're getting smarter. So they're understanding, that I feel like a lot of that dumb money is leaving, has already left, if anything. People got burnt by, grading really junk PSA slabs, and sold them off obviously at a loss, and then just like, I don't want to return back, I'm too scarred from it. So I think there's definitely a combination of both, which is unfortunate, but it also needs to happen. I mean, the markets just can't come up forever, and I think that's just something that you've got to expect. The share market goes up and down. It's really everything. And yeah, I think obviously the panic with cards is a little bit higher because it is a little bit more volatile, and it's not like shares where you've got a seller straight away. But
yeah,
it's very interesting, I'd say.
Yep.
With shares as well, like, I guess the investment side, this would be where I suppose, for our listeners, is there any advice? Are there bargains to be found in this period? What would you do if I'm looking to invest a little bit of money and I'm watching these people sell their slab stuff? What am I looking for as far as a longer term investment? Going, you know what? I'm going to capitalize here. I'm going to avoid the junk and I'm going to buy something of value.
That would depend. Are you in the hobby full time or not?
Say I'm relatively new and just dabbling.
If you were relatively new, I would probably say I wouldn't get into sports cards, just because I've had a few friends that, that got into it and bought cards, went up. But the thing is, if you're not tracking cards, daily, even weekly, you don't know what the prices are going to do. They're going to go up. They're going to go down. You don't know what influences it, whether it's the off season,
Yep.
injuries, or anything like that. And I find people that aren't in it full time or understand sport full time well, I feel like they don't do as well. So my recommendation.
Fair point. Let's go back to, because I'm sure none of those people listen to this show. Fairly niche, but we'll say the lower end, the people that are in the hobby regularly, they're going into Razzes trying to win a big card because they can't afford to buy one. That, you know what I mean? The lower you're not spending $10,000 on a card, right? At the biggest, I'm going to spend $500 on a card. What am I looking for? And I do, like, not myself. I look at stuff weekly, and daily. But if I'm one of these casual people that's in the hobby, that's on the pages regularly, trying to get a bargain in a bunch of the sales, frequently watches the NBA, I have League Pass, I know what's going on in the league. What am I looking for?
Yeah, so if you're someone who obviously has a great knowledge of the NBA, I always try to find, in terms of players, so obviously Ja Morant is a really hot player and everyone wants to own one of his cards. But I feel like, for me, my investing philosophy, if you call it that, is I want to find the person who become the next Ja Morant. So I would rather try and find that player. And again, if you watch the NBA daily, there are a lot of players that are slept on. And I feel like if you watch the film quite regularly, you can find those hidden gems and almost, I guess, prospect them before they even blow up. And I think that's a decent way to try and go to potentially make money. If you understand the NBA well and you're able to find a player that no one's speaking about before they blow up. Like, look at all these people who were on Jordan Poole. Like, I wasn't a Jordan Poole person, but people were on him in his first season. He was in the G League. He was barely getting any playing time. Fast forward into his third season, he's playing a key role on the Warriors championship team, and his prices still haven't gone down. Like, I keep thinking to myself, they're going to come down eventually, but they're just not. That would be my play. I would, back your knowledge, and as long as you understand the sets and everything like that, don't just go for base, but make sure you understand the sets and go for a player that you feel like could eventually pop off in the next couple of years. That's more my thinking. I know people out there would want to get Ja Morant. They want to get Luka and pay big money for that. But again, I'm more someone who would rather try to find the next person and back my own knowledge.
Yep. I mean, we've talked about, I suppose, the 25-year plan versus the 5-year. You know what I mean? Like, is this a short-term investment, or is this this card's going away in a safe and it's not coming out for a very, very long time? Like, I guess those high-end players that are already established, they're the cards you vault, right? And so you go, you know what? I'm going to go and get myself a Steph Curry, even though he's well and truly at or past his peak, because when he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, it's still going up. Like, it's one of those cards that we'll always appreciate. Kobe, LeBron, Jordan. Do you know what I mean? Like, that upper echelon. But the short term, I guess, is what you're saying, is those stars that we're prospecting on, just looking for spikes. And you're right. If you're not in the hobby, like, you're not regularly in the hobby, you might miss that spike. So it's hard to prospect on something if you're not there all the time. If you sort of don't check anything for a couple of weeks and all of a sudden your player explodes, you've missed your boat.
Come on, ads. We need to hold him accountable here. He hasn't given us a name. Come on, Matty.
You like
who's the next Ja Morant?
You danced around that question so elegantly.
Who's going to be the next Ja Morant?
You need to give us at least one name. Come on.
I'll give you 3 names. So the players that I'm going to be looking out for at Hobby Hangout, Keldon Johnson, Tyrese Halliburton, and I know he's a really big name already, but I'm a massive fan of LaMelo Ball. So I like his marketability.
Mm.
And I feel like, yeah, I really like his play style, his marketability. And I feel like that bodes well for his card prices.
Yep.
And he isn't a premium like Ja Morant.
Mm.
So that's someone I like.
Cool.
LaMelo's actually dropped off quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So do you see that as like a market opportunity in that it's not so much because of his playing he's dropped off, it's just because people have gone off him a little bit and want to unload their investments? Like, what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, he's not the main rookie set anymore. So you drop off, and I like him more than Anthony Edwards.
Do you really?
I
Why
know
is that?
people. Anthony Edwards is interesting for me. I just feel like
Mm.
he's a great scorer, but that Minnesota team just annoys me, and
Well,
he's a
Minnesota's a
volume shooter.
franchise, is the
So
losingest franchise in history. So
yeah, yeah. So I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know. Anthony Edwards for me is just.
there's a risk.
I would prefer Lamelo for me. Yeah.
Okay.
I like I like how he handles the ball a fair bit as well. He's someone that could probably potentially average 25, 7 and 7. Like I like that range that he's got.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Keldon Johnson, what's your thoughts around him?
Yeah, so Keldon's one I like. I liked him before the DeJounte trade, but I can't believe the Spurs traded DeJounte. But anyways, it's obviously that they're trying to rebuild and go for Wembanyama. And yeah, with this season, they're obviously not going to do too well. But if Keldon's got the majority of the ball,
Yeah.
he averaged
His
I think
usage rate is
21.
going to double this year, right?
Yeah.
Pardon?
His
What was that?
usage rate is going to double this year.
Yes,
Yep.
I think it's I think you got players as well there. Like I don't know who's going to be the main point guard. It'll either be Trey Jones or Josh Primo, but you've also got Devin Vassell. I think the Spurs are quite interesting. They're going to have a few players that pop off this season, maybe have some career highs. But I think Keldon will be the main one
Yeah.
because post All-Star break he averaged like 21 or 22 points a game. Really good efficiency as well, and I think he's still quite young. He had the Team USA experience. He's under Coach Pop. It's a good system for him, and I think they're going to develop him well. And obviously, if the Spurs wanted to trade DeJounte and not Keldon, I think I'll back the Spurs front office. And maybe they thought DeJounte's attitude wasn't the greatest, and they think Keldon's the future there. So I don't know. I'd rather back them in.
Yeah.
I like backing in front offices.
You chose 3 small markets. Do you think that would influence the price ceiling of the guys you've picked?
Absolutely. I think, small markets obviously will impact.
Yeah.
I think that hopefully they're enough to exceed, and hopefully they're going to be enough to be noticed for a potential All-Star spot next season. It does influence it, but hopefully, like again, their individual play overcomes that.
Yeah. So the player that's on my mind more than anyone at the moment is Donovan Mitchell, and he's holding tight, but at the same time, he's still trickling downwards. He did spike a few weeks back, but we were just looking at his prices off air. And look, I personally think this is more about market than his ability. And in
Do you
terms
think it's
of
Utah?
I can't really think of any other good reason. I think Utah is going to be absolutely horrendous this year, though. So I think that's going to be a little bit of the problem is that he potentially could even slide down a little bit more if he stays in Utah. But I think the upside for this guy is, if he gets traded to the Knicks or he gets traded to, even like a team like the Rockets, I think has got a bit more exposure.
Sorry, I'm a Houston fan. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's why I was just like, yeah.
The Knicks looks like the most likely.
That's a very Knicksy thing to do, is to get someone like that. Like the Celtics, I wouldn't rule out. They're definitely trying to put some talent on that roster. Could he get traded to the Brooklyn Nets as like a 2 or a 3 team trade, with KD being passed around as much as he is at the moment?
KD threatening to retire.
They're just unbelievable, these guys, aren't they?
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell's interesting. I don't know if Utah will deal with Boston because Danny Ainge is the GM, so I don't know if you want to deal with his former team. I think he already took one of their assistant coaches, so I think there might be a little bit of play there. But
yeah,
I think the Knicks does seem likely because of what the Knicks can provide. They can provide some youth. I don't know who they'll include, but you've got Obi Toppin.
They've got heaps of pieces, haven't they, to move
a lot
around?
of pieces,
They're
exactly right.
Yeah,
They
I'm not
accumulated
sure if I want
pieces
Donovan Mitchell on the Knicks though. Like it is a big market team, but that backcourt of Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, I don't know defensively how they'll go in the playoffs. it's quite weird because Donovan Mitchell in college he was known for his defense, and he came out being a 20-point per game scorer. It's really interesting to see how his game has developed, and now he's a defensive liability.
He
But
got torched, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think if he goes to the Knicks, I want to see what defensive pieces they put around him, because Brunson and Donovan Mitchell as your backcourt, not sure that's a winning formula.
Yeah, it's a bit risky, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts or final questions, lads?
I'm all good.
No. I think we got a couple of nuggets. Now I've also, I was going to ask the question, but I did. Russell, ready for this? I did some research this week.
Oof.
Yeah.
Go easy, lads.
And Matthew, I believe you just dropped a YouTube video with your 2021 rookie class prospects. Three tips on who to invest in. So I'm not going to ask about who to grab from this current class if you go into a break, which players you're looking for, because that's on your YouTube. We'll put a link to that one.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so that one I did try to I did avoid the top 4 or 5 picks.
You did say that. I was like, oh, what do you think of Cade? And you're like, I'm not talking about Cade. And I'm like, well, okay. Well,
I could easily just do 3 or 4 videos talking about those players. Yeah, they're quite easy, and I like all of them. But I think I had to challenge myself a little bit. And obviously, when we look back in a year's time, we can obviously see if I was right or wrong.
Well, that's it. That's the excitement of prospecting.
I think last year I had Patrick Williams, Isaiah Stewart, and Theo Maladone, and there you go, all 3. Patrick Williams, I'll give a bit of a long leash to, but Isaiah Stewart, unfortunately, is going to be a backup center, and Theo Maladone, I don't know. I think I was really rushed into making a video there, unfortunately.
No, well, it's interesting. It's one of those things. It's not. We're prospecting. We're not actually. We're not clairvoyants. We don't see the future, and
yeah, it's a gamble, isn't it?
It is.
I think Patrick Williams is still a very intriguing prospect, and his prices have come right down. So you can buy numbered rookie stuff for,
and
not much at all. And I think the problem's going to be with Maladon is just that team is absolutely stacked now.
They've got so many point guards. They got Giddey, Shea, Trey Mann, Maladone. There's more on top of that, but it's just crazy. I don't know. It's hard to buy anyone from OKC as well. Like even Shea in their future.
Even their bigs can handle the ball too. So someone like Theo, you know what I mean? Is he even going to get a touch? So irregardless if he plays the point guard position, I think their vision is just to get the ball and run. Like they're going to be super fun to watch this year. I think they're going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
But how does that translate to card value? That it's just so crowded there. Like I really, for me, I'm still really high on Pokachevsky, to be honest. I think he's sort of somehow already been forgotten about, but he's the same age as their rookie that just came out this year. So, you know what I mean? It's, to me, that team is just super. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I think we just say thanks. Thanks so much for coming on. It's great to see you again. And
this has been fun. We'll see you for the first time for some of us.
And we'll see you on the Hobby Hangout too. I think that'll be great. And
the Hobby Hangout.
Yeah.
We need to do more of that stuff. We need to get some trade days and face-to-face meetups.
Do you want
Absolutely, it'll be good to see people out there and catch up with you boys as well.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug, Matty?
Oh, I mean, go check out my YouTube channel as always, MattsCardShop. Do go through some sports card content there, and I also post on TikTok as well. That's all I've got to really say.
Yeah,
we'll put some links up in the show notes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for hanging out.
Bye-bye.